Rain lashes the windshield like applause for cruelty. Cole kills the engine beneath a broken streetlight and turns to me with the same smirk he's used for years whenever he wanted to remind me who held the reins. Get out, he says. Walk home. 37 miles should teach you a lesson. For years, I swallowed words and called it survival. Tonight, I let silence answer. My name is Riley Hart, and I have spent months preparing for this moment. I step into the storm. The Pacific air tastes of salt and rust sharp enough to sting. Cold soaks through my shoes as his taillights smear red against the asphalt, then vanish. Once that sight would have gutted me. Now it feels like a door shutting on the wrong side of history. I slip my phone from my coat and stop the recording I began 8 months ago. Proof hums in my pocket, steady as a heartbeat. People think courage is loud. It isn't. It's clarity. Headlights crest the bend, 2 bright coins cutting through the dark. A black pickup slows deliberate and sure. I know that truck. I know who drives it. And for the first time in years, the lesson is mine to teach. Evan leans across the cab before the truck even stops, his coat landing on my shoulders like a shield. A steaming cup presses into my hands. You good? He asks, eyes still scanning the lot. Voice steady the way only trained men manage at 2 a.m. I nod, though honesty would require a longer answer. The seatbelt clicks across my chest, and the sound steadies me more than my breathing does. Tires hiss against the slick road as Evan pulls us back into motion. I dial Maya. She answers on the first ring, her words already moving at courtroom speed. I tell her the timestamp, the words, the location. She doesn't pause to gasp. Files drafting now. We'll be at the courthouse when the clerk unlocks the door. Don't go home. Find a place with cameras and witnesses. Already on it, I reply, watching the rain blur the highway into gray ribbons. We take the long route, bypassing the cameras Cole knows and the ones he doesn't. Evan drives like a metronome, giving me silence wide enough to think. I pull out my phone and replay the clip. Cole's voice, calm as ever, tells me to walk 37 miles. In the background, rain roars like an accomplice. Proof clean and undeniable. The motel glows like a lantern on the edge of town. Inside, the clerk blinks at my dripping hair and pale face. Rough night, she asks, not prying, just offering a thread of kindness. Rough enough to need a room. I give her my maiden name, the one Cole never cared to learn, and hand over the emergency card I've kept hidden for years. The clerk slides a form across. Want me to know anything? I nod. My words are plain, where he left me, what he said, how far from home. She writes a neat, careful script, each letter a small oath. Cameras blink above us. Those work, I ask. She nods. I snap a photo of the posted policy for later. In the room, Evan lays out my soaked coat plugs in my phone and checks the locks without speaking. I shower quickly, counting tiles to steady my mind. Steam blurs my reflection, and for a moment, I don't look like a victim in someone else's story. Dressed in dry clothes, I send Priya the audio with a single line, same account, same timeline. She replies instantly with a link to her dashboard. Arrows, dates, wires, money fleeing legitimate accounts, and resurfacing under shell names. The pattern is unmistakable. I sit on the edge of the bed, the hum of the vent filling the silence, and realize I'm not afraid. Not tonight, not with evidence multiplying and allies awake in the dark. By dawn, the audio is backed up twice the incident report, tucked safely in my bag, and a paper cup of coffee waiting at the front desk. Evan's truck idles outside in a puddle pretending to be a lake. We pull onto the highway just as the ocean comes into view, gray and restless against black rocks. I press my hand to the glass, watching waves throw themselves forward, only to break and begin again. For years, that was me. Not anymore. Today, the storm belongs to me. Courthouse mornings smell of wet coats and floor polish, a mix of nerves and routine. Evan parks a block away, eyes sweeping rooftops, before we step out. Maya is already on the steps, files clipped tight against her chest. She studies me for one beat, then says, Judge Alvarez has the emergency docket. She's fast. She hates theater. I brought facts, I tell her. Inside, the clerk stamps our filing with a heavy thud. The sound feels final, like a lock turning from the right side. We sit on a hard bench while the docket moves. Cole arrives minutes later, his suit too sharp for daylight, his tie a shade too proud. His eyes scan the room, land on me, then shift to Evan at my shoulder. The smile fades before it can settle. Our case is called. We stand. Maya leads with the recording. The speakers crackle with rain before his voice slices through calm, deliberate. Get out. Walk home. 37 miles. Learn your lesson. The words echo off the paneled walls. I don't watch him. I watch the judge. She tips her head, slightly recognition flickering. When the audio ends, she asks 3 questions. Was I safe to return home? Did I have somewhere else to go? Has the behavior escalated? Yes. Yes. Then I explain. Escalation without bruises. Accounts drained overnight. Accusations framed as questions, a life measured in balances, where I always came up short. Maya slides Priya's diagrams across the bench. Clean arrows trace funds fleeing legitimate accounts into shells with names that pretend to be charities. The judge reads expression flat, but I can see the weight stacking behind her eyes. Cole's lawyer tries to soften it, calling it a misunderstanding, a marital spat, poor phrasing. As if phrases strand people 37 miles from home. He leans on tone because facts won't bend for him. The gavel doesn't fall yet. Judge Alvarez clears her throat and delivers her orders, a temporary restraining order. Exclusive use of the residence freezes on identified accounts, immediate notifications to institutions. Each phrase lands like a brick. My chest lifts with each one. Then the back door opens. 2 men in suits slip inside, rain darkening their shoulders. They sit like ordinary citizens, but the room feels them. Cole doesn't turn, though his jaw tightens. We adjourn just before noon. The clerk hands down papers still warm from the printer. Cole's hand twitches toward his phone, but his lawyer presses his sleeve down. Not yet, his gesture says. In the corridor, the 2 men approach with quiet courtesy. Ms. Hart once says, "We'll need you to verify a few details." I answer steady now, each fact clean. Then they ask the judge to hold the parties a moment longer. Back inside, a sealed packet is passed to the bench. Judge Alvarez reads just enough to nod. The men rise. Cole's outrage sparks, then dies when he realizes there's no script left to follow. Handcuffs glint. The courtroom exhales. I don't smile. I don't clap. I breathe. The gavel drops, once a punctuation mark on months of silence. Outside, rain has softened to a mist. Umbrellas bloom like dark flowers across the square. I pause on the steps, inhaling damp air that doesn't sting anymore. For the first time in a long while, I feel accurate, like the truth is no longer borrowed, but mine to hold. Evan rests a hand lightly on my back. Maya folds her files with a snap. We walk down together, the storm behind us, and something steadier ahead. By afternoon, the courthouse clip has traveled farther than I thought possible. A local station runs a 30-second segment. By evening, industry blogs circle his name like sharks that smell blood. Messages find me, some sympathetic, some cruel, many anonymous. Victims always get the mixed bag support, laced with suspicion, kindness, twisted into blame. Maya filters what she can, answering calls with the flat patience of someone who has outlasted storms before. Priya dives deeper into numbers, charts expanding, until the pattern is impossible to ignore. Shell companies blooming like weeds, money leaving at dawn, and reappearing under false names by lunch. That night, I don't return home. The motel's humming vent keeps me company. Evan plants himself in the chair by the window, pretending the game on TV holds his focus. At 2 a.m, I wake and find him awake too. "You can sleep," he says without looking over. I'm paid to be boring. I laugh softly in the dark. Boring has never felt safer. The next morning, we step back into the house. Evan moves ahead, scanning hedges, eyes alert. Inside, everything looks staged: bowls of fruit, shining counters, polished, a life arranged for photographs. On the counter sits a perfect bowl of apples. I pick one up, bruised under its skin, and throw it away. I snap photos of the mail, the alarm panel, even the fruit. Memory with proof. By noon, Jenna appears at my porch, shivering in a thin jacket. She doesn't wait for an invitation. She blurts her confession before she sits down. Debts that grew teeth. Promises from Cole that if she gave him glimpses into my calendar, my clients, my work, he'd handle her creditors. She laughs once bitter. I know how pathetic that sounds. I let her talk until she's empty. Then I ask for the emails. She has them all archived like shame does when pride won't. We sit shoulder to shoulder building a timeline. When we finish, she wipes her face and whispers, "He used me to get to you." "No," I say gently. "He used us both to get to what he wanted." The difference matters. She exhales like someone who's been waiting to be told she's not the only casualty. That afternoon, I meet Priya in her cramped office, full of plants that thrive despite neglect. She spreads documents across the table. Arrows flow like rivers until they vanish offshore. Donations to charities that don't exist, consulting fees for work, never done transfers hidden in acronyms. "We can freeze what's here," she says. "The rest will take treaties and patience." I nod. Patience I have. Before sunset, the task force calls. They want a statement, the kind that lives in sealed folders, not in headlines. I sit at my kitchen table and speak into a recorder. I list dates, amounts, moments when suspicion hardened into fact. My voice doesn't shake. When the session ends, I feel lighter, as if setting words in order pulls weight off the chest. That night, the house feels different. Not empty, but reclaimed. I cook something simple, pasta and jarred sauce, because survival doesn't always need ceremony. Evan eats across from me, polite enough not to say he's impressed I can still cook. Jenna calls later to say she made it through another meeting, her first week clean from bets. For the first time in months, I sleep under my own roof without waking at every noise. The silence isn't hostile anymore. It's mine. The courthouse becomes a second home, though it never feels welcoming. Hearings stack on the calendar. Each time Maya walks me through the language line by line, like a teacher studying a nervous student. Temporary orders harden into permanent ones, freezes become firmer, and the circle of protection grows wider. Cole's lawyer shifts tactics, painting me as vindictive, emotional, unstable. Judge Alvarez doesn't indulge it. She steers us back to conduct, to records, to facts that don't wilt under cross-examination. Every time the gavel falls, I feel the air change by a degree gravity, tilting back towards center. The task force case grows teeth. Former employees come forward one by one with stories and files. A client in Idaho submits an affidavit that matches Priya's charts exactly. A developer hands over a thumb drive full of emails, Cole bragging about deals that were really siphons. It becomes clear he wasn't just reckless in marriage, he was reckless everywhere. News spreads in waves. Some outlets focus on the scandal, others on the broader pattern of financial abuse in marriages. Maya agrees to one interview, carefully shaping the narrative around survivors rather than spectacle. I read the article later and feel strangely seen. At home, I rebuild in small increments. I change locks. I return his mother's pan when she asks because it was never mine. I keep the chipped mug I broke myself because it feels like an honest scar. Each night, I write one line in a notebook about ownership. Today I paid the bill and the light stayed on. Today I walked through my front door without checking behind me. Today I laughed without rehearsing it first. Jenna visits often, her face clearer each time. She talks about her program, her debts, her slow climb back. We sit on the porch, wrapped in blankets, fog rolling in from the ocean, like it's auditioning for permanence. She tells me she's making amends not as repayment, but as a promise. I squeeze her hand and believe her. Then the letter arrives. An envelope in his precise handwriting delivered through the system. Maya opens it with me on speakerphone. One line in block letters, "I hope you learned your lesson." I ask if I can keep it. She says yes, as long as she keeps a copy. I frame it later, not out of spite, but as evidence, a relic to remind me how far definitions can shift. Once it was meant as punishment. Now it hangs next to my degree, a testament that lessons can be reassigned. Weeks pass. I file incorporation papers for a foundation. The name carries my coast, my survival, and my intent. We draft a mission statement short on adjectives, long on verbs, protect, educate, support. We rent a small storefront with wide windows and paint the walls pale blue. The first clients walk in hesitantly, carrying stories they have never said aloud. We listen. We plan. We give them maps of exits and choices of verbs that mean more than survive. I stand in that office one evening, sunlight thinning, and realize I no longer smell fear in my own breath. The letter on my wall has lost its sting, replaced by the hum of printers, the clink of coffee mugs, the shuffle of people taking steps toward freedom. The world hasn't turned perfect. It never will. But my life belongs to me again, line by line, gavel by gavel, choice by choice. The trial that mattered most wasn't the one with reporters outside or transcripts on public record. It was the slow, deliberate march of paperwork through offices, the endless hearings, the stack of affidavits that grew taller than my patience. Justice is rarely a single thunderclap. It's rain steady and relentless until the ground finally gives way. Cole's legal team tried to cut deals to whittle charges down to something survivable. But the task force had enough evidence to choke any bargain. Wire fraud, embezzlement, misappropriation, they all stacked neatly, each one traced back to the arrogance that made him believe no one would look closely. When sentencing came, I stood in the courtroom again, clutching the statement I had written at my kitchen table. I had stripped it of adjectives, left only nouns and verbs, because facts spoke louder than any flourish. I told the judge what it cost me in hours, stolen friendships pruned down to avoid his jealousy days. I walked on eggshells inside my own home. But I also spoke of the unexpected deposits, neighbors who became allies, a sister rebuilding her life, strangers who reached out not with pity, but with solidarity. The judge listened, then handed down years that will stretch longer than the silence I once lived with. Restitution orders followed, plain and unromantic but binding. He will never hold another license to touch other people's money. He will live in a space where control is no longer his weapon. It wasn't revenge, it was balance restored. Outside the sky was bright for once. Maya clasped my shoulder. Priya smiled quietly, and Evan leaned against the column like he always does, eyes on the horizon. We didn't celebrate with shouts or champagne. We simply walked out together, the air finally lighter. Life afterward came in steady beats. The foundation grew into something real. We painted the walls soft blue, set a bowl of apples on the counter, bruised ones included because imperfection is part of survival. Clients arrived hesitantly, some whispering, some unable to speak at all. We gave them silence when needed, maps when possible, choices always. Tuesday nights became legal clinics. Thursday mornings, Jenna sat at the front desk, filing with diligence and smiling at anyone who needed proof the world still held kindness. Small victories stacked up. A woman left with a binder of her finances organized for the first time. A man called to cancel a meeting, not because he lost courage, but because he'd already walked out and didn't need us that day. We cheered for that kind of cancellation. At home, I framed the letter, "I hope you learned your lesson," and hung it by my degree. Visitors sometimes asked why I kept it. I told them it was an artifact, a reminder that lessons can be reassigned. Once it was a threat, now it is proof that I am the one writing the syllabus of my own life. I ran into the motel clerk at a grocery store months later. She remembered me instantly. "You look lighter," she said, as though she'd been waiting to measure the change. I thanked her for that cup of coffee she brewed without being asked. She shrugged like it was nothing. We both knew it was everything. On the anniversary of that storm, I drove back to the spot where it all began. The streetlights still didn't work. The ocean still hurled itself against the rocks. I parked, rolled the window down, and let the salt air coat my lungs. I didn't rehearse speeches. I didn't imagine what I would say to a man who wasn't there. I simply sat until the cold reminded me I was alive and clarity hummed louder than fear. Driving back, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Is it bad if I stay?" 5 words typed without punctuation. I pulled over and called. A woman answered, voice trembling like the ocean, trying not to scare anyone. We talked for half an hour about chalk lines that can wash away and paint lines that can't. I told her she didn't have to leave tomorrow or next month. We'd help whenever she chose. I didn't assign her a lesson. I offered her a plan. That night, when I pulled into my driveway, the porch light I'd set on a timer spilled gold across the steps. I stood in it for a moment, letting it name me home. Inside, the kettle hummed. I made tea, not coffee. I sat at the table and wrote one more line in my notebook. Today I said yes to something and no to something else, and the world kept turning. If you ask me what lesson I learned, I could tell you about statutes and restraining orders, about the clean geometry of frozen accounts, and the sound of a gavel striking wood. But the truth is simpler. I learned that fear is loud, but clarity is louder. I learned that love, which requires you to shrink, is not love at all. I learned that sometimes the most powerful lesson isn't the one taught in cruelty, but the one reclaimed in survival. Tomorrow, I'll unlock the foundation door, straighten the apples, check the panic plan. Someone will come in and share a story they've never spoken aloud. I'll listen patient, steady. Together we'll make a map. Together we'll mark exits. And outside, the ocean will go on reshaping the rocks. Proof that persistence, quiet, relentless, remakes even the hardest surfaces in time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.